She knew this moment would uncover truths that had been hidden behind fear, pride, and careless cruelty. Inside the office, the manager rushed around nervously preparing papers and checking every detail, hoping nothing would go wrong. He had received the message last night that a regional director would visit, and his hands still shook from worry. Sabrina entered soon after, dressed in expensive clothes and wearing her usual confident smile, unaware of what waited ahead. Daniel followed her, looking tired and thoughtful, as if the weight of the previous night still pressed on his mind. She believed her influence was powerful enough to shape the entire day. Without knowing, her power was about to collapse. The door opened and every head in the office turned when Emma stepped inside wearing a clean black suit. Her presence brought a sudden pause, as if the room recognized a shift in balance. Though no one understood why, the manager hurried to greet her with a shaky voice, welcoming her to the inspection and gesturing toward the conference table. Sabrina stared at Emma, her eyes widening as memories of last night flashed across her mind, creating sudden fear. Daniel blinked in confusion, unable to understand how the waitress who had served them was now standing with authority. Emma greeted everyone politely, but her eyes rested on Sabrina for a brief second, sending a silent message of strength. "Please take your seats," she said with calm confidence, and the room obeyed more quickly than anyone expected. Sabrina sat stiffly, gripping her handbag, while trying to hide the panic building behind her practiced smile. Daniel glanced at her, sensing something dangerous forming in the air, though he could not yet understand the full truth. Emma opened her folder and began the meeting with a steady voice, asking the manager to explain recent performance issues. The manager nervously shared details about service complaints, staff behavior, and customer incidents, including one from the previous night. Emma listened carefully, nodding slowly, while Sabrina's hands tightened as if she feared the direction the meeting was taking. Daniel shifted in his chair, glancing between Emma and Sabrina, sensing a storm forming, but unsure how to prepare for it. Then Emma asked a question that made the room grow tense as she requested details of the waitress who had been fired. Sabrina sat frozen while her breath caught, and the confidence she loved to show began to melt away. Quickly, Emma waited calmly, her expression steady, as she allowed the silence to gather around Sabrina like a tightening rope. Finally, the manager began to explain, but Sabrina jumped in, trying to twist the story into something that favored her image. Emma did not interrupt. She simply watched with quiet strength and waited for the lies to finish spilling across the room. Daniel felt his stomach tighten as he listened, because deep down he sensed that the story Sabrina told was not honest. When Sabrina finally stopped talking, Emma closed her folder slowly and looked directly at her with calm, unwavering focus. "Thank you for sharing your version," Emma said gently, though the softness carried a strength that made Sabrina swallow hard inside. "Before we continue, I would like to share something important," she added while turning a page in her folder. The manager leaned forward, anxious. Daniel held his breath, and Sabrina gripped her chair so tightly her knuckles turned pale. Emma straightened her posture, letting her calm authority fill the room before revealing a truth no one expected. "I know everything that happened last night," she said, and her voice cut through the room like a clear blade. Sabrina gasped, her breath shaking as every memory of her cruelty toward the waitress slammed back into her mind. Daniel lowered his gaze, feeling embarrassment rise inside him as he remembered the scene and his own silence during it. Emma continued, her expression unbroken, steady, and firm. As she prepared to reveal the part of the truth still hidden, everyone in the room felt the rising tension, as if the walls were closing in, slowly waiting for the next words. Her silence deepened the suspense, pulling every thought into a single moment that seemed ready to explode. In that waiting breath, the power shifted completely, and Sabrina felt the fear of losing everything she believed she controlled. Emma took one quiet step forward, her presence filling the space with a calm intensity that made everyone freeze. Then she lifted her gaze toward Sabrina, preparing to reveal the truth that would turn the entire meeting upside down. The office felt like it was holding a single long breath as every eye stayed locked on Emma, waiting for the reveal. And in that quiet, charged moment, Sabrina realized she was no longer facing a waitress, but someone far more powerful. Sabrina felt her heartbeat pounding in her ears as Emma looked straight at her with calm, steady eyes that held something she could not understand and something she feared more with every passing second. The room felt smaller, as if the air itself waited for Emma to speak, and the manager shifted nervously in his seat while Daniel watched with worry growing across his face. Emma placed both hands on the table, her movements slow and controlled as she allowed the silence to build its own weight, because she wanted everyone to feel the truth before she even spoke it. "There is something important I need to say," she began, her voice soft but powerful, and every person in the room straightened their posture, as if drawn in by a force they could not resist. Her eyes locked onto Sabrina, who froze like a statue caught by light, unable to hide or run from the truth that hovered just inches away from her carefully built world. "Last night a waitress was fired after a customer demanded it," she said, and her calm tone made Sabrina's shoulders as tighten as memories from the restaurant struck her again like sharp stones. The manager nodded nervously, unsure of where the conversation was heading, and Daniel leaned closer, wanting to understand the full meaning of Emma's words, while Sabrina whispered weakly that it had been necessary. Emma tilted her head slightly as if studying Sabrina's fear, and then continued, "The waitress you judged, the waitress you insulted, the waitress you demanded to remove from the staff was not just a waitress." A long tremble passed through Sabrina's hands, and she shook her head slowly, unable to accept the path Emma's words were clearly forming in front of her. Then Emma spoke the line that shattered the silence and exposed everything that Sabrina had tried to bury. "That waitress was me." The words echoed through the room like a sudden storm, and every person froze as if time itself had paused to witness the moment. The manager gasped, choking on his own breath, while Daniel stared wide-eyed, his guilt rising in a heavy wave because he remembered every word, every insult, every moment he stayed silent. Sabrina felt her world tilt as if the ground beneath her cracked open, and she clutched the table to keep herself from falling, even though she already felt like she had dropped from a great height. "No," she whispered, voice trembling. "This cannot be. You were wearing an apron. You were cleaning tables. You were—" Emma raised a hand, gently stopping her excuses before they could grow into more lies, and she spoke with the quiet authority of someone who knew the power of truth. "I was evaluating the restaurant in a real environment," she said. "I work undercover at times to understand how customers and staff are treated, and last night I saw everything I needed to see." Sabrina felt her throat tighten as she tried to form words, but nothing came out, not even a weak defense, because the truth wrapped around her like unbreakable chains. Daniel closed his eyes, remembering how he had watched it all without stepping in, and his voice cracked with regret as he whispered, "I am so sorry, Emma, I should have stopped it." Emma nodded kindly, but did not soften the seriousness of the moment, because fairness mattered and justice had to be done, especially after such cruel behavior. She turned her attention to the manager, who sat frozen with fear and confusion, and she spoke with clarity that left no room for misunderstanding. "Your staff must be treated with respect at all times," she said. "Last night a rule was broken, and an employee was fired without proper investigation and without fairness." The manager nodded so quickly that his chair squeaked on the floor, and he apologized repeatedly, begging for another chance to correct his mistake while sweat formed on his forehead. Emma then looked back at Sabrina, who sat trembling as if the cold truth had drained all warmth from her body. "Do you understand the seriousness of what you did?" Emma asked, her voice calm but firm, and Sabrina lowered her head as tears formed in her eyes. "I did not know," she whispered, but even she knew that ignorance was not an excuse for cruelty. Emma stepped closer, her presence strong and unshaken, as she spoke with the steady tone of someone who believed deeply in right and wrong. "You judged someone you thought was below you," she said. "You used your voice to hurt another person, and you expected the world to bend to your anger." Sabrina covered her face, feeling the weight of her own actions pressing down, as if her pride had finally cracked, leaving her with nothing but regret. Daniel placed a gentle hand on her shoulder, but she pulled away, overwhelmed by shame, fear, and the collapse of the image she had built around herself. Emma watched them with a calm expression, then opened the report folder and laid it gently on the table, creating a moment filled with heavy expectation. "This meeting," she said, "will determine the consequences for last night, and we will make sure the truth guides every decision." The room grew silent again, and each person felt the tension wrap tighter around them as Emma prepared to reveal what would happen next. And every person in the office felt a wave of fear and curiosity rise inside them, because the truth had already shaken the walls of this space, and now the consequences were waiting right at the door, like a cold wind ready to rush in. Sabrina sat with shaking hands, unable to lift her eyes, because she knew the truth had exposed the pride she once wore like a crown, and now that crown felt shattered and scattered across the floor, leaving her bare and helpless in front of the one person she had tried to destroy the night before. Daniel looked at Emma with guilt crawling through his chest, remembering how he stood silent watching Sabrina insult her without stepping in even once, and that silence felt heavier now than anything he had ever carried, because he finally understood how cruel the moment had been for someone who did nothing wrong. Emma placed the folder on the table with slow, controlled movements, showing that she was not speaking from anger or revenge, but from calm authority and fairness. And this quiet strength made the manager shake even more, because he realized how fragile his decisions from last night truly were. "Before we continue, I want honesty," she said, while raising her eyes toward the manager, who seemed ready to sink into the floor, and he nodded quickly, knowing what she expected from him, and knowing he could no longer hide behind fear or excuses. Asked him to explain the firing again, but this time truthfully and without bending the story to please anyone, and the manager swallowed hard before admitting that he panicked when Sabrina screamed in front of the customers, and he chose fear over fairness because he did not want to anger a wealthy guest. Emma listened without emotion, but everyone could feel the weight of her silence, because her quietness was more powerful than any raised voice could ever be. And Sabrina curled her fingers tight, trying to shrink her presence as much as possible, while Daniel sighed deeply, knowing this moment was not about wealth or power, but about character. Emma finally nodded and said that the restaurant had broken several policies and harmed an employee without reason, and she explained that consequences were required, not just to correct mistakes, but to protect the dignity of every worker who gave their time and effort to this company. She turned to Daniel, who looked torn but ready to hear whatever came next, and she told him that customers who abuse staff endanger the environment this company worked so hard to build, and that no amount of money could excuse mistreatment or cruelty. And Daniel lowered his head, understanding that he had failed not only Emma but also his own values. Sabrina lifted her eyes with difficulty and whispered that she had not meant to cause so much trouble, and she tried to blame stress and frustration, but the words sounded weak and hollow, because even she knew there was no excuse strong enough to erase what she had done. Emma stepped closer and told her that actions reveal a person's true nature, and that the way someone treats those with less power shows far more than the way they treat those with more. And Sabrina felt those words wrap around her like a mirror, forcing her to finally face her reflection without makeup or pride. Emma then announced the first decision she made, which was that the firing from last night was officially canceled, and the manager was required to file a correction report stating that Emma had been removed unfairly and without proper investigation. And the manager nodded again, wiping his forehead as he agreed to everything she said next. Emma explained that the restaurant staff would receive proper training to prevent similar incidents, and she said that every employee deserved protection, and that fear should never guide decisions, especially when dealing with people who serve with honesty and patience. Sabrina stared at her, waiting for something worse, because she knew a deeper consequence was still coming. And her chest tightened as she waited in silence, gripping her bag so hard the straps left marks on her fingers. Emma finally addressed her directly and said that Sabrina's behavior was unacceptable and dangerous to staff morale and customer respect, and therefore she would be permanently banned from every branch owned by the company, because the safety and dignity of employees came first. and must never be placed beneath the comfort of a single rude customer. The word struck Sabrina like a cold wave, and she gasped softly as the reality sank in, and Daniel placed a gentle hand on her shoulder, though he knew nothing could cover the shame. She now carried. Emma ended the meeting by stating that dignity must always be protected and that cruelty would never be rewarded under her watch, and her voice carried a calm power that echoed across the room, making everyone feel the truth in her words. As the meeting ended, Sabrina remained frozen in her chair, knowing her choices had led her here, and Emma walked out with quiet confidence, preparing for the next steps, while Daniel stood still, realizing that everything had changed forever. The restaurant glowed with warm lights and soft music, creating a calm evening that made every guest feel welcome. Maya, the young waitress, moved between tables with a gentle smile, carrying a tray with steady hands. She liked her simple job and tried to make every customer feel comfortable. She never caused trouble, and she never expected trouble to find her. But this night was about to change everything. Front door opened, and in walked a couple who pulled every eye in the room. The man named Ethan wore a dark suit and carried himself with quiet confidence, but the woman beside him stole the attention. Her name was Bella, and she wore a silver dress that caught every light like broken stars. Her expression was sharp, her chin lifted high, and she looked around as if nothing in the restaurant was good enough for her. Maya stepped forward, ready to greet them with kindness. Bella did not smile. She scanned Maya from head to toe and whispered something to Ethan, who looked uneasy. Maya guided them to a window table where the city lights shined like tiny lanterns. She pulled out the chair for Bella and tried to keep everything perfect, but Bella already seemed annoyed by the chair, the table, and even Maya's presence. When Maya handed them the menus, Bella complained about the font, the layout, and the smell of the paper. She said the candles were too dim, the music too soft, and the table too close to other guests. Maya listened patiently, even though her heart felt heavy. She left to bring their drinks, hoping things would calm down, but the night had other plans. Maya returned with 2 glasses on a small tray. Bella stood up at the same moment, her silver dress brushing the edge of the table. Then came a loud ripping sound that echoed through the room. A tear opened across the side of Bella's dress. Bella gasped. Ethan froze, and every guest nearby turned to look. Maya stared in shock, unable to understand what had happened. Then Bella's shock turned into anger. She pointed at Maya, accusing her of ruining the dress, saying Maya must have pulled the chair wrong or moved too close. Maya shook her head, trying to explain that she never touched the dress, but Bella refused to listen. She stepped closer, her voice rising enough for the whole restaurant to hear, calling Maya careless and untrained. People whispered, phones lifted to record. Ethan tried to calm Bella, but she pushed his hand away. She wanted someone to blame, and Maya stood right there. Bella grabbed Maya lightly by the arm, not hurting her, but making the moment feel tense. She leaned close and whispered that Maya would pay for this, that someone like Maya had no right to be near people like her. Maya felt her stomach twist. She tried again to explain, but Bella shouted over her, demanding the manager at once. The manager hurried over, looking worried. Bella told him a dramatic story full of lies, claiming Maya destroyed the dress on purpose, claiming the dress cost more than Maya's whole monthly salary. Maya tried to defend herself, but Bella interrupted her again and again. The manager looked torn between keeping a wealthy customer happy and defending his staff. Bella crossed her arms and raised her chin, waiting for everyone to agree with her. Ethan stayed silent, his face red with embarrassment. Maya felt the weight of every eye on her. She held the tray tight to stop her hands from shaking. Her heart beat painfully fast, and her breath felt trapped inside her chest. She had never been humiliated like this in her life. The manager apologized to Bella and said they would investigate the situation and consider Maya's future at the restaurant. Bella smirked, pleased with the answer. Maya felt tears building in her eyes. She whispered again that she had done nothing wrong, but her voice sounded small compared to Bella's loud accusations. Bella turned away as if Maya did not matter. Ethan sighed, but still did not defend her. Maya walked toward the back of the restaurant, her vision Blurry and her heart aching, everything felt heavy, the room, the sounds, the shame. She felt alone, even though people surrounded her. She feared losing her job, but she feared the humiliation even more. She hoped the night would end soon so she could go home and escape this painful memory. But Maya did not know that the story was far from over. Someone was waiting outside. Someone who cared for her. Someone who would not let this cruel moment be the end of her dignity or her hope. Someone strong was ready to change everything for her. That night Maya stood in the narrow hallway behind the kitchen, with her hands shaking and her breath unsteady. Her heart felt like it was sinking deeper and deeper, as voices from the dining area echoed through the walls. Bella's angry tone carried farther than any normal conversation, and every sharp word made Maya feel smaller. The chef gave her a worried glance but said nothing because he already knew. Bella's type customers who believed the world belonged only to them and no one else mattered. Maya tried to wipe her tears, but more kept falling. She leaned against the wall and closed her eyes, wishing she could disappear. But the sound of footsteps grew louder. Bella was not done yet. Bella marched toward the hallway with Ethan following behind her. Ethan looked tired and uncomfortable, but Bella looked like a queen ready to deliver her final judgment. Maya stepped back as Bella's eyes locked on her, those eyes sharp and cold as ice. Bella told Maya that she would pay for the dress, that she would lose her job, that someone like her had no business talking to people with money. Maya tried to speak, but Bella lifted her hand to silence her. Ethan tried whispering to Bella, telling her that maybe they should leave and calm down. But Bella waved him off and said she wanted to make an example out of Maya. She wanted every worker in this place to fear her name. Maya felt her heart squeeze tightly inside her chest. The humiliation was painful, but the fear of losing her job burned even more. This job was simple and humble, but it mattered to her, and she needed it. Bella took out her phone and said she would post about the restaurant online and destroy its reputation unless the manager fired Maya immediately. The manager arrived again, his face pale and stressed. He looked from Bella to Maya, unsure what to do. Bella glared at him and said the whole restaurant had seen the disaster and it was his responsibility to fix it. Ethan stood behind her, rubbing his forehead as if he wished the entire scene would vanish. Maya felt a small spark of strength inside her. She stepped forward and told the manager that she did not touch Bella's dress, and she never damaged anything, but her voice trembled, and Bella laughed at her shaking words. Bella said Maya was lying, and that the video someone recorded would show everything. Maya swallowed hard, because she did not know what the camera had captured. She only knew the truth, but the truth felt weak next to Bella's loud confidence. The manager apologized again to Bella and said he would speak to Maya privately. Bella smirked as if victory tasted sweet, and she turned to leave the hallway. Ethan followed her, but his steps were slow, like he did not want to be part of this any longer. Bella walked back to the dining room with her chin high while Maya stayed frozen in place, feeling like the walls were closing in on her. The manager told Maya he needed to talk to her after her shift. Maya nodded even though her stomach twisted painfully. She returned to the dining area, quietly wiping her face and praying no one would stare at her, but she could feel many eyes watching. Some guests whispered, some pointed at Bella's torn dress, some even gave Maya small looks of sympathy. But none of that could erase the shame sitting on her shoulders like a heavy blanket. Maya tried to continue serving other tables. Though her hands felt weak, Bella sat proudly at her table as if she owned the entire room. Ethan kept his eyes lowered, barely speaking. Maya walked past them to bring water to a nearby family, and Bella whispered loud enough for Maya to hear, saying that untrained staff should not be allowed near important people like her. Maya bit her lip to stop the tears that threatened to fall again. She placed the water on the next table and walked away quickly, her chest tight and painful. Bella looked satisfied seeing Maya in distress, and she leaned back in her chair with a smug smile. Ethan glanced at Maya as she passed by, and he looked guilty, but he said nothing. Bella kept bragging loudly about her dress, about her shopping trips, about all the money she spent, as if she wanted Maya To feel even poorer, Maya tried to keep working, but every step felt heavier. The humiliation had not faded. It kept growing like a shadow following her. Maya knew she needed the job, but she wondered how she could survive the rest of the night near the kitchen door. The chef called softly to her, asking if she was all right. Maya nodded, but her eyes told the truth. The chef told her to breathe and stay strong because people like Bella came and went, but honest workers stayed. Maya gave him a weak smile and walked back out to finish her tasks, but she still felt the weight of Bella's insults pressing down on her shoulders. Bella continued feeding her anger with every comment, and Ethan continued sitting silently as if trapped between guilt and fear.